Just council before we go live, highly
TDs from online. The 29. I understand that we're still operating into the was offered this morning, and so we will proceed. This is the meeting of the Environmental Strategy and Planning. Maybe it was a good new name now.
Yes.
We're still using the old name.
no, it's the environmental strategy.
This Environmental Strategy and Planning Committee. We have a apology from Councillor Forbes. We'll note that, and no public forum requested. So confirmation of the agenda for this meeting. We have a motion. Move that, please. Councillor Weir, seconded by Councillor Malcolm. Put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. The declarations of interest. I want to remind you about standing aside on decision making when a conflict arises between roles as elected representative and or any private or other external interest that may be had. I don't think there's been any registered, so just noting that. Now, no presentations either for this meeting, so we'll move on to the minutes of the 20th of February 2025. Take it everyone's got logged on and able to see them.
Sorry, for those that prefer working out a didn't, it's back at now, so
Yeah.
Kylie's found it.
Happy to move.
Moved by Councillor Malcolm, seconded by Councillor Noon, that the minutes are a true and accurate record of that meeting. Put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. And one item arising an update on terms of the report on the Blake's report update, and it's been moved to the Science and Research Committee meeting of June. Thank you.
Yes.
So now the reason we're here mainly is to look at the Regional Pest Management Plan Review report there in your papers, number GOV 2529, and to update the committee on progress to review the Target Regional Pest Management Plan 2019-2029 and seeking endorsement of the Regional Pest Management Plan Review Project Plan. So the recommendation is that the committee notes this report, recommends that the council endorse the Regional Pest Management Plan Review Project Plan is submitted, and there's some options there, and endorse staff progression conversations with staff at ECAM and Environment Southland to explore an opportunity to develop cross-regional pest management plan, and endorses establishment of a council reference group to oversee the development of the new regional pest management plan. Review relates to councillors and one alternate, including members of the proposed council reference group. So there's a need to have any discussion, comment from this team here.
Kia ora, thank you. This is Michelle Ewens. This is her first meeting with councillors, so please be nice. Enjoy your So she's our biosecurity specialist terrestrial and started earlier this year in the team, so it's great to have her here. And she's leading the project for the regional pest management plan refresh. So I've got a quick intro that I'll just go through to give you some context for the paper. So we're seeking endorsement of the project plan for the regional pest management plan review, which has been developed by staff. So Michelle's leading that, but there's a group of staff across council that are working on this. Through initiation of this project, staff have found that there are some great opportunities for alignment with neighbouring councils, which is reflected in this report and in the project plan. We're also seeking endorsement of establishing the councillor reference group. And if that's endorsed, we seek nominations for the councillors to be included in this work so we can commence it. And finally, we seek endorsement to progress conversations at a staff level around the opportunities to develop cross-regional pest plans with Environment Canterbury and Environment Southland to see whether this is something that could be viable and is of interest to them as well. So yeah, we can take any questions.
Thank you, Libby. I'm open for questions. Kia ora, Councillor Wilson.
Look, great that we're working collaboratively. I'm just not quite sure whether we've extended that offer to the whole of the South Island or why it has been limited only to the two adjoining the adjoining ones. Because West Coast is joining as well. It's because I see huge merit in us having a collective voice and setting ourselves up for the best funding we can in a collaborative manner, given that we are generally not seen, although this afternoon may be pleasingly proved wrong, I doubt it, that seen by government otherwise in the South Island generally. And considering that in biosecurity, or so many of those things that the RPMP are doing are shared, and it provides an opportunity for councils to take an individual lead then in organising things like wallabies and wildlife plants.
Yes, we're very happy to explore working across the South Island. So I've just come from a meeting this morning with all of the South Island councils other than Nelson. And I did raise that this paper would be coming up today, and they are all interested in having that conversation. We did talk about how there could be some issues. There'll be some pests that it'll be easy to cover the whole of the South Island, and some might not be. And there'll be localised issues that each of us have. So we'd need to figure out how we manage those. But that absolutely, if you'd like to change the recommendation, we can add that to cover all of the South Island councils if that is preferred.
Are you moving that, Councillor Wilson?
Well, I was going to wait for all the other questions, and I'm hoping that we will wait around for this meeting that there'll be one or two more than this. I'm very happy to move that as an amendment at the time, but
Seconded by
do you want to?
Councillor Ware, and there's two questions online. First of all, from Councillor Laws and then Councillor Callagher.
Yes, hi. I mean, gosh, you could almost finish this in about 5 minutes. So, of course it is, off you go. And we don't need to talk about this anymore. The other issue is, I'm just interested in that South Island concept. At the moment, are you intending to include the territorial authorities of Nelson, Marlborough and Tasman as well? Or is this just a Canterbury, Otago, sorry, I haven't read the paper, Canterbury, Otago and Southland initiative?
So, that was the nature of Kate's question. Was at the moment the discussions have been held with Canterbury and Southland, who we have a close working relationship with. Kate had indicated there's an interest to expand that to all of the South Island councils, including the 3 unitaries at the top. Libby has had a discussion this morning and raised that as an opportunity. They've all expressed an interest in being involved. Whether that translates into any hard work, we're unsure, but we can certainly, given that positive response, involve them in those conversations.
Yeah, I can think about the lakes. I was thinking in particular around the lake. And I was thinking there are shared aquatic lakes that would be all of the South Island, not simply for the regions enumerated thus far.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think Kate's foreshadowed that she's going to move the motions but amended rather than listing the two councils to say South Island councils.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you. I'm a bit lost. I'm not entirely clear what are the benefits of collaborating with other councils, because pests or pest issues across all aspects are really relatively ring-fenced into the areas that they are a problem. And then surely us as a council resource to either manage those or require them to be managed. Obviously, we have some cross issues with wallabies, but then we're dealing with them quite specifically because ECAN has a major issue with wallabies and then we don't want them. So we're in quite different spaces there. The regions are quite geographically different, and the way pests invade and then how they're managed for each of these regions are quite different. So I'm actually not really understanding where the benefit of collaborating with other councils and then widening further, how there would actually be savings and how there would actually be a better overall management of pests under that model.
A good question, thank you, Councillor Kelleher. So wallabies is a good example, but there's other pests that we've got listed in our plan, and also that aren't listed in our plan that might be listed in other councils' plans that could potentially come here. So what we're interested in collaborating with them around is how we could reduce pathways into our region and stop those pests coming here, and also how we can help protect other councils that don't have some of the issues that we have. So an example of that is in Southland, where they don't have wallabies. So how can we ensure by doing our work that that's not going to be an impact for them in the long run? The collaboration as well generally is useful for us in developing the regional pest management plans to ensure that we're utilising our resources appropriately. So there will be some research and cost benefit analysis work that the other councils deliver for creating their pest plan that we could then utilise within our own plan. So we would then be providing good value for money for ratepayers through ensuring that we do that work. And then also this, as we work, I'm not sure how long it might take to develop a South Island pest plan or a cross-regional pest plan, but that could be a long-term goal. It's probably going to take a little bit longer than delivering by mid-2028 to do that. But we're just interested in having those conversations now. And if the other councils are interested in that, then we can pursue that. I was only talking to staff at my level, so I don't know whether that's something that's of interest to the councillors. Does that help with your question?
I think it does. It's identifying one part, which is the spread of pests between regions. But really, for me, the biggest issue in pests is managing them within your regions. And I think each of these regions will manage pests differently. We don't need to manage wallabies to the same extent that ECAN has to manage wallabies.
No.
And then there's pests in Southland that we don't need to manage to a point as well. So I think the cross collaboration can be done certainly around pest spread easily, but without it being the sole focus or the directive focus of the overall plan. To me, I think we're getting too national, and I think these issues need to be managed more regionally. So, but anyway, thanks for the answer.
Yeah, there is one reason that working across boundary would be useful, and that's for properties that might cross a boundary. So, or a farmer might have a property in Canterbury and in North Otago, and if we have different rules, that's quite confusing from a communication point of view. So where we can align them, we really want to try and do that, just so that it's easy for people to understand what their obligations are, and they're not different if you live 5 kilometres away and it's just because of a regional boundary.
Sorry, just to challenge that again. I mean, that is only around the boundaries themselves, and so that will be a very sort of minor factor to the large number of farms or land areas across our region. would you direct the entire plan on the basis of just where farms on the boundary might have land on both sides? If they have that, then they know they have to operate under two separate regimes. Anyway, sorry, there isn't really a question there. It's just more of a challenge. So thank you.
Good, councillor Malcolm.
If I talk pests and pests across boundaries, so I'm considering this to be a reasonably good idea. Had it not been, and there is a question coming, had it not been from the coordination between Otago and Canterbury, and then also Bay of Plenty, and I can't think who else they got together with. What? Sorry? Waikato, thank you very much. The national funding that has come from for the wallaby problem would not have happened. Correct? Here's my question then. So is that correct?
Yes, I think that is correct.
Yeah. So and would that be had we not had that government funding, which I think was somewhere up $19-20 million, the issue of wallabies coming into Otago would be a rateable problem for Otago people only, as opposed to taxpayers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that? I think the government and I suppose I'll catch this by saying and part of what I think Gary's saying, I agree, which is our plan's got to be fit for Otago, and that's how we should design the plan. However, the collaboration with other councils is also something that this government is very clearly looking for. So they are looking for, they talk about shared services, and this is not getting into shared services, but it is about how do we show that there is we can demonstrate collaboration across the regional sector, and that we've got proven methods and proven plans in place. If we are seeking central government funding in the future, that is one of the things that I expect they will be looking for. So there is, I think, a need to move down the path of collaboration, even if it doesn't mean or result in actual changes within the pest plan itself. There are other things that might come out of that process.
Councillor Wilson.
I was tempted to ask a question like how many wallabies have been found with a map who understood that they had to stay in Canterbury rather than come to Otago or Hillymo or any of those other things. So that'd be
Only
pretty...
7.
I think the important thing is that while we can talk about wilding trees or wallabies, the expertise in this area is substantial. The range and breadth of matters dealt with in the regional pest management plan, and in order to have the expertise in each individual council with each problem is A, unaffordable, but B, unlikely to happen. There's expertise, and so if we can share the expertise around a whole area, learn from each other about those where those strengths are and those expertise, that is where the shared understanding and the opportunity to develop a cross-region pest management plan may have some efficiencies. But is that correct?
Yes, that is the aim of this. So to have an Otago, specific plan, but reflecting all of those real clear benefits of collaboration.
And the motion is here with that slight amendment only asks the staff to progress exploring it. It doesn't say that we definitely go there, and there will be another couple of steps in that process should we decide to go down that. I imagine quite a substantial number of steps.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So the status of TAR, similar thing, it's across Westland, Canterbury, Otago. I believe they're into Southland now. And they've got to be managed at a macro level, I think.
Yes, I agree that collective approach is going to help, because again, they don't know where a boundary line is.
Yeah.
We're putting moose in there soon too.
Give me your voice. Yaks.
Good, Councillor Malcolm.
Just a point of clarification. So we'll be going through this review period, and paragraph number 9 on page 8 says that you did make some changes through a minor change process outlined in the Act. Where we have a minor hiccup at the moment, I'll be reasonably explicit, which is gorse going wild in residential areas. that is not covered by our plan because it says rural land. Is it possible to make a minor change now to that plan because of that?
No, it's not, because it will have an impact on residential people. So when it was, the plan was consulted, it's defined that the rule is only applicable to rural people who live in a rural area. And so when it was consulted, residential people didn't have that obligation. So we'd need to reconsult that if, so it's not considered minor, is really the answer.
Yeah, and the changes that were made were around typos and duplication. So that was what the delegation was provided for, and that's what's been able to be corrected. But anything of changing a rule or anything like else like that flips it into that previous RPMP change process that we've talked about. In situations like that may get picked up in this RPMP review.
So was the typo not that you put in rural and should not have put rural in and it should have been land? I thought that was it.
Good try.
Thanks for the explanation, really appreciate it.
Councillor Robertson.
I just wanted to ask on the risks and opportunities table, on the first one that outlines what the risks and opportunities would be with the 6-month delay. Risk number 3 and risk number 4. So risk number 3 is that we would not be using neighbours' resources to support plan development, and risk number 4 is increased consultant costs. Wasn't too sure how that lined up. Perhaps I've read that table wrong, but if we delay 6 months to line up with other councils, I'm not sure how that would increase that risk.
Sorry, that is what that means. So if we have that, the ability to align with that 6 months, that risk is reduced.
Oh,
Can
I was
use,
reading it around the wrong way. Yep.
might be how we wrote it,
Yeah.
but it will reduce that risk if we are enabled to have that till end of June 2028, because we can align better and use those resources better. Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, that's.
Any further comment? Kia ora, Councillor Paul.
Yeah, I'm pretty different about the last page. Page 30 it is like your governance risk monitoring schedule, where you've got severe, moderate, etc. I'm just wondering if there's a lot of red showing. Is that where you see a risk currently?
Yes, so, yeah, that is correct. So essentially the risk assessment is split into 2 halves, and the red is showing what the risk would look like if we had no controls in place or no mitigations in place.
Oh, yeah.
So once we've put the required controls in place, we can reduce that risk and lessen it basically to council. So,
Yeah.
So as we progress the project plan and those risks are mitigated, those colours will go from red to green as we progress the plan. Basically.
Yeah, so because they're more red because we haven't really started to do the plan basically, yeah. So that explains that to me. I was wondering if that was actual or just an example, so that was a good explanation. It's a really good report, it's really good, and I like on page 25 the governance structure diagram, and I just found that really easy to understand how where all the pieces fit in. So yeah, thanks for that. Plenty of good information and fully supportive of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Laws.
I'm looking at page 19 of the report, so I'm interested if this is passed today, where we go to from here. Are we doing all the heavy lifting on this? And not only are we doing all the heavy lifting, but are we doing all the funding as well?
For our peace plan, is that what you mean?
Well,
with the other councils?
Yes, the cooperation with other councils.
No, we're not doing the heavy lifting. Yes, some of the other councils have already commenced their review. So we'll have an equal amount of resource that we provide to deliver these to deliver each of our plans if we keep them all separate. So no, we're not doing the heavy lifting.
Okay, so when you say you're going to be doing an RPMP review 23-27 engagement plan, and that's due sometime next month, are you talking about our regional plan only?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why I'm looking forward to where you go after this. I'm presuming that each of the other councils will have to make a decision in principle, is that right? As to whether or not to have a South Island wide or some sort of derivation thereof. So what happens today if we say yes? Does Gretchen then write to all the other councillors at a governance level to invite them to consider this matter?
Not at this stage. So the motion is proposing that staff go away and have conversations at the staff level to then bring information back to this table to have a conversation about whether or not you want to explore that further, and we would anticipate that the other councils will be taking a similar approach. So we're only just seeking that endorsement for staff to go away and have those conversations and to have those at the South Island wide level if that motion is passed.
Aren't we doing this round? I mean, you're spending an awful lot of time, staff resource and tax ratepayers' money for something that might fail at the governance table. Wouldn't it be better to get the agreement in principle from those councils and do the work second?
Not just for clarification. So, Libby or Joe, we're not proposed that the output of this would not be a single piece plan, because under the legislation, each council still needs to have its own piece plan. So, Michael, we will still need to deliver an Otago regional peace management plan. The opportunity for alignment just ensures good alignment between the plans within the South Island where it makes sense. But there's a small amount of resource required from staff to engage with those councils at this point to say, are you interested or not, and aligning the conversations as we go through the process of developing the plan. The answer might be no, it doesn't suit our work program, but we're still going to have to go and develop the Otago one anyway. It's not a case of having a decision up front around whether we create a South Island plan, because as I understand, that's not an option.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Weir.
I just wanted to jump back to the table. Gretchen was talking about because I noticed that 2, 4, and 5 are the same in both things. I just wonder if that needs review. But I was also going to ask if moving it to a whole of South Island rather than just our neighbouring councils would change any of those opportunities or risks significantly in your eyes?
I don't think it would change the risks. The only risk that I could foresee if by extending out how many councils you work with is that there is an agreement. But that doesn't matter because we can still localise our plans.
Yeah. And that doesn't preclude us still working with the neighbouring ones.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's the only risk I can see right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Councillor Robertson.
I was just going to come back to Councillor Laws's question around working with all of the other councils, and we do have regular get-togethers as well, and there has been interest, I suppose, initially from all the chairs and CEs to work together, so it's not, yeah, we still need to talk about it, but that's what happened in the development of the current set of plans. Under the Biosecurity Act, you need to do a detailed cost-benefit analysis. We don't know if that act is going to change significantly, but if we do have to do a significant cost-benefit analysis, There's limited resourcing across the country for somebody with expertise that understands all of the pests in New Zealand really well, can do that analysis. It's really detailed, and if you were doing it, it would make a lot of sense to be doing all of the South Island at least, if not even wider, because yeah, it's that's the type of scale that it fits really well. And then from there, once you've got that data, you go away regionally and decide, back to Gary's question, you decide what's appropriate for your setting based on the assessment that's come for your area. But it just does logically make heaps more sense efficiency-wise to do it this way. I'm sorry, that's not a question, but there is interest from councillors to do it together was the answer to his one.
Right, Kelly, look, yeah, Councillor Wilson.
So with that amendment, I think in the first instance, it's easier to move 1 to 4 together and then discuss 5, if that's okay, it'd be easier.
Sure.
Then not for the 5. We'll have questions on 5 after, if this passes.
So if that's all agreed on recommendations 1 to 4, with the amendment, sorry, including the amendment,
Yeah.
3, you're moving?
Yeah.
And seconded by,
Kevin do that? No.
Councillor Ware, seconded. Yeah. So it's been moved and seconded, open, you have discussion. Yeah. So,
No, you still have one to go.
All right. Yeah, I think this is a really good opportunity for us to seize. We'll still need to see if governance that those other councils are keen to work together, and staff may find out that it would only really work with our neighbouring councils or something, or maybe not all South Island or something, but we should definitely explore that whole of South Island approach. Collaboration feels like a no-brainer. We can probably get some efficiencies in our work programs for our existing pests, and then also some more strategic thinking potentially in preventing that further spread of pests up and down the South Island, especially those landscape scale pests that we're dealing with more and more at the moment. There's so many pests that I feel like most people in the South Island don't even think about, from minor birds in the North Island to golden clams and plague skinks and stuff. And as has already been pointed out, I think there's a real opportunity for us to make the most of the Cook Strait essentially as the best possible natural barrier that we've got, far cheaper than any structures and efforts that we could deploy as a regional council alone. So I think this takes some small steps towards us being able to hold the line as an island, and also importantly, as Councillor Wilson pointed out, allow us to advocate collectively, potentially for central government action where appropriate. So very keen for us to take these steps. Kia ora.
Kia ora. We have Councillor Kelleher and then Somerville.
Thank you. Look, because this is exploratory with the other councils, then I'll tentatively support it at this stage. My concerns still remain around collaboration in these spaces. I think there will always be, no matter what our plans are put in place, there will always be the ability to collaborate where we need to work with other councils joining us in approaches to central government. So I personally don't think that needs to be deliberately written within our plans. It really worries me that if collaboration gets too carried away, that we end up with our plans written in similar manners, tweaked to align with other councils, and that may not fit with how we will do pests in our area, in our own areas. So I'm not going to vote against this at this stage. I think the exploration amongst the councils is valuable first, and then consider it once staff have done that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, look, it's very good we're getting on with this, because clearly things have changed in the pest management environment, and working with other councils when we can, so that we can both contribute and draw on experience and expertise makes very good sense. As well as all those other reasons about the cross-boundary stuff and the things in lakes and rivers. I just wanted to clarify that the amended recommendation up there is presumably referring to all South Island regional and unitary councils.
Good point.
Whether that's
Yes.
worth specifying
Thank you.
that.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Might be.
Look, I don't want to let them debate. I just want to say that sometimes we need to be listening to where the government is setting a direction and be seen to be following that. And this is a really good opportunity to be doing that. It is also about saving our ratepayers' money by combining resources to the same outcome. And there's a whole lot of other things I think that may come out of this. If we work collaboratively, we may have a presentation for a much better system as well. But again, doing that as one voice, as I wanted to do as recently as yesterday, to change things in a different way. We've got a really difficult process here with the putting these plans together. They are cumbersome, and trying to be one voice on this stuff, advocating for an even better process would be, at the very least, something that would be a vast improvement. So don't want to overcomplicate it, but I think the opportunities for much better outcomes are considerable. 2019, one of the very first things that happened on the new council, which I joined, was the signing off of the RP Regional Pest Management Plan. It had been an awesome amount of work to get to that point. It took months, if not years. I had been a submitter on that process and saw how fraught it was. The plan was vastly improved, but it has been found to be redundant almost as quickly as it took to develop, because pests have that ability to be less flexible than, more flexible than we are. And on that basis, I really welcome the staff putting it up for review, and the opportunity of doing this better and cheaper and getting better outcomes is all of the reason why I've tried to do that one change. And I think we need to really consider how we have a voice in government these days and be effective, and that is by having combined voice with as many others as possible. I will be supporting it. I hope everyone else does.
Thank you. Oh, well, I think we can put the motion and test it. All those in favour, please say aye, or
Aye.
Aye.
against. Unanimous. Good. Thank you. Proof of a good paper too, so thanks. We've got the next one, yes, to handle separately. Recommendation 5, 2 councillors and 1 alternate. Is that being moved?
No, I'm happy to nominate to move 2 councillors, being Councillor Noon. Councillor Noon having been on the previous Regional Pest Management Planning Governance Group, and Councillor Malcolm Basabi. He's already involved heavily in pest management, particularly around wallabies and cross-boundary issues, with the alternate being Councillor Wilson.
So that's been moved. Seconded by Councillor Mefford. Any discussion? Very good. We'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against. Once again, unanimous. Good. Thank you. Right, so we can end, and there's a paper in there for information, I think, that is attached, but rapid issues. Thanks very much.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to probably just say a few things just leading up to this. So, about 10 days ago, there was a meeting with Minister Patterson and some local farmers in the Waiholder area regarding rabbit control work, et cetera. And it was it was a well attended meeting actually. It was a very convivial meeting, and during the meeting with Minister Patterson, widely discussed in the audience and supported by Minister Patterson, that perhaps would be a good idea for the council to lobby the government as to the management of their land and what can happen regarding getting better collaboration and working together across the boundaries between public and private land. Most of the I noticed in the report there's a bit of it, it's mainly about NZ Rail, but it was probably at the meeting probably more around Transit New Zealand, because there's some areas where there's very good relationships being established with NZ Rail. But that aside, it's really about just getting that creating awareness between the private landowners and the public entities as well. And the letter is basically, although it's come from that meeting at Waihola, is pretty much relevant across all of Otago. So we'd anticipate a letter would have some specific relevance to Waihola, but the letter would be based on general relationships across the whole Otago region. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCall. So.
Thank you. So just to add on to what Councillor McCall said, we'd just like to acknowledge the great work that has occurred through ORC staff engagement with organisations such as Kiwi Rail and LINZ, and we really look forward to working together with them more proactively to reduce rabbit populations. So a lot of the work that is occurring at the moment is reactive, and we're looking at how we can support them becoming more proactive. So we just wanted to acknowledge the good work that is already happening. And then we can take any questions. And this is Rob Wynn, who's the team leader of biosecurity.
Right. Yeah, Councillor Wilson, and then Somerville.
Thank you. I could like to declare that I unintentionally did a site inspection along the Clutha Gold last weekend and saw the number of rabbits jumping through the fence from the Kiwi Rail land. It is a huge issue in that area and very, very obvious. But the question is, what are we asking for? And I have absolute support for the intent of this letter. I'm just wondering if, is it funding, coordination, or because it, depending which department and which minister you're writing to, it will be a different beast. And I'm just wondering whether we have to have some more clarity about what that would be.
Yeah,
or land access actually be another.
It can be all three of those things that you mentioned. So looking at funding is really important, so that if there is a problem, then those organisations are able to respond. So I think that's probably the most important thing. Access we can obtain through warranted officers to do inspections, but we are a bit, as the paper talks about, we're a little bit limited in what enforcement action we can take when we have good neighbour rules in place, which aren't the same as what private landowners have in place for them. So I think it's just really highlighting that there is a problem. I don't know how high it's gone within those organisations that they need more funding. I'm assuming it's been raised, but we just thought it might help having some support from our governance going to ministers to say that that there are these concerns.
No, thank you. And I just think we need to be really quite specific, possibly, to get their concerns. The access I was contemplating was actually the access to shoot or the access to track, rather than the access for a warranted officer, which I don't know that warranted officers go out there with a gun to actually know. Look, I know how difficult it is to get onto Kiwi Rail land. So I'm just wondering if there's been consideration about how that would be dealt with as well. And yeah, I'm trying to be constructive. I'm really supportive of the idea, but I think we really need to be giving them a clear direction of what we are seeking from them.
I think the access is probably not too much of an issue. I don't think the private landowners want to go and do the control on Kiwi Rail land or on NZTA land or whatever land it is. But I could be wrong. That's not what we're hearing.
Okay.
They'd rather that they were doing that work.
Councillor Lawrence. Sorry. It was Councillor Somerville next, was it?
It was.
It was, sorry.
Okay.
My mistake, Councillor Lawrence. You'll come after Councillor Somerville.
Thank you. Thanks. When we're talking public land here, does that also include district and city council land?
No, it doesn't. It's just Crown land that are, have the good neighbour rule applicable to them. So, district and city councils have the same rules that a private landowner have.
Ah, right, okay. And look, in paragraph 4, we say the limited applicability of the rules of the RPMP to Crown lands restricts the ability of staff to undertake enforcement action. Is that something that could be changed in the RPMP we've just been talking about, in a different RPM? Could we deal with some of these issues?
So it sits under the Biosecurity Act. So it would need to change under the Biosecurity Act rather than the Regional Pest Management Plan, which is a flow of.
So our revised Regional Pest Management Plan, which we've just been talking about, is not, can't sort these issues in the end.
No, it can't, but the Biosecurity Act is under review at the moment.
Right.
So there's an opportunity as well through these letters to influence that potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lawes.
If I was a minister receiving the letter, I understand the general point that's been made, which is the hypocrisy of central government absenting itself from the same rules as all private landowners and territorial authorities in the Otago region. I get that. And I get the fact that as the government, they're in charge of 22% of all of the land in Otago, which is an awful lot of land if you are going to allow unrestricted pest activity. In fact, it voids much of the work you'd want to do on that private and TA controlled land, the rest of it, because they'll be reinfected from those public or government areas. I get that. But in the background material to this, apart from private, so in paragraphs, I think it is 3 and 7, apart from sort of anecdotal information that's provided by private landowners, I'd like a bit more clarification as to what the issue is. In other words, what's the evidence that there is a problem? Now, I understand, so as I've just explained, I understand the general issue, but I'd need a bit more evidence that publicly owned land and controlled land, or government controlled land, was causing a problem than private anecdotal commentary. Do we have anything else apart from that?
To answer your question, there is quite a few examples, but it's all landowner feedback to our officers on the ground. So when an officer will be inspecting a property and there is a Crown land adjacent to it, there is quite a bit of pushback when we are trying to engage with that property owner and become compliant with the RPMP because the neighbours are not doing their job. We were hearing that quite loud and clear when we were at the Waihola community meeting, especially when we're talking about roading corridors, that there is a lack of engagement in that space to help them be compliant with the RPMP when their rabbits are coming from an adjacent property. We could start documenting that in a more formal way, but it is captured in some of the commentary when we talk to our officers that some of their biggest issue is dealing with adjacent landowners who are Crown.
I understand what you're saying. I would have thought you'd be documenting everything if you're going to ask for the government to change a policy and legislation. So you're going to have evidence, and it's going to need to be empirical rather than anecdotal. That's just an observation. But the second question I guess I'd have is, you could collect that information by having council staff go onto DocLand and just do a simple modified McLean scale analysis on various parts, particularly those designated as problems. Does anything preclude us taking that particular action?
I don't think so. We can look into that a little bit more. We just wouldn't have the rules to back us up to take any action on it if it wasn't within 500 metres of the boundary.
So you can go in to conservation land, for example, state 500 metres from the boundary and do a modified McLean scale analysis. You've got that ability already, do you, without changing anything?
I believe so, but I would double check that before we did it.
Okay. And you could actually, and so that's what the power you've got now. If you wish to take it a little further, you just would need what, conservation or your local DOC conservators approval to do so, would you?
Yeah, we work with them in a non-regulatory way to see if there's action that they could take to reduce those populations.
Just the count.
Just with the count, but using the counts to say we think that the populations are too high, and what we can say that they are if we use the modified McLean scale.
Sorry, Libby, the question is just around, are we able to access the land to undertake forget about the follow-up action? Are we able, as warrant officers, to access Crown land to undertake the counts?
I believe so, but I would need to check that with our legal team because it's not within our, we wouldn't be using our rules.
Do you see the point that I'm trying to make?
So Michael,
you're going to need a bit more than anecdotal commentary if you're going to convince government.
So I think, there's two and I agree, if we were pushing for a policy change or even more than that, a legislative change, there's a significant amount more background material we would need to gather to undertake that sort of lobbying work. As I understand, Minister Patterson was very interested in the issue based on the feedback he heard at the community meeting. He has limited ability in this space, obviously, because it's not a portfolio he's responsible for. I am sure he will be doing the necessary lobbying with his ministerial colleagues. I know he's in a different pest management meeting in Lawrence today, dealing with different pests, and so he does have a big interest in this space. I think the suggestion he made to ORC was more encouraging us to write to ministers to ask their agencies to engage more with us and the community on this issue. So it's not necessarily about legislation and policy shift, it's just a direction to staff to be better engaged and look for solutions. So my take is that that could be done if we felt as a council we wanted to push for legislative, i.e. Biosecurity Act changes. There is a significant amount more work we would need to do, and we would likely do that with the sector, who would all be experiencing similar issues. But Minister Patterson's suggestion is more around engagement, and I think it was to support the conversations he'll be having with ministerial colleagues by having a letter come from us suggesting that better engagement would be well received by the community.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm suggesting to you that given the nature of the problem you've outlined, and for as long as I've been sitting around the council table, this has been an issue, that it's time for us to do some empirical research, and it wouldn't take us much to prove the point, would it?
We could do that, and if that's the view, then I think that's probably almost a separate matter to the one that's in front of you today, but certainly could be something that becomes a focus for staff in terms of gathering that evidence to start the conversation around more substantial changes. So I agree with you there.
Councillor Robertson.
Yeah, mine was a similar question to Councillor Laws's. We had a field day with Minister Patterson. I think Councillor McCall's done some leadership work here with staff. If I was going to write a letter to an unknown entity at this moment, I'm not exactly sure who it would be. I'm trying to figure out, we want to be successful with this letter. So it's either a compliance issue we want action now at these sites because they're an issue in Otago. And this one has driven it in Waihola, and it's been ongoing for a really long time. I don't know why this is such a hot spot and that they love to live in Kiwi Rails land in this particular area, but they do. And I remember it from over 20 years ago when this issue has been ongoing. So there's that one. There's most likely others as well. But if we're going to write, I agree with Councillor Laws that it should be what are we actually asking for? Not, gosh, we've got a problem just in Otago, and it's about Crown land, but we're not outlining exactly where or what the issue is. Just come have a chat to us. That's not enough, I don't think. So is it a compliance issue? Can we deal with it under the rules we've got already? Otherwise, it's a Biosecurity Act issue, and we are writing to say we need some changes to the Biosecurity Act. Also, with this, we were talking about rabbits, and we're talking about the ineffectiveness of the good neighbour rule, etc. But it's not just for rabbits. So if we've got an opportunity to raise this issue, it's wider than rabbits. So I'm just trying to figure out what would the leader be and how could I be most successful? Is it a compliance issue? Is it a Biosecurity Act issue? Is it both? How are we going to target this best?
So if I've understood the question, and my understanding of the issue is that it is around that engagement and proactive response in planning to addressing this issue, rather than at the moment a significant compliance issue that we would want to see some action on. So it certainly is more in the, I think it was the first rather than the second, and certainly if we were looking for greater action and response in a regulatory space, we would look at using the regulatory tools we had available and having that empirical evidence with it. But we are really just seeking, and what I understand the community is seeking, is that proactive engagement from a number of agencies in a number of areas across the region. So that is what we are hoping could be put forward and picks up on my understanding what Minister Patterson was recommending that we do as well.
Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you. Yeah, I have real experience of this. It's a very real issue. My question is, if we're approaching NZTA, transit hasn't been for years, we're approaching NZTA about highway corridors, and we're approaching Kiwi rail corridors, then shouldn't we also be approaching TLAs about their roading corridors? Because if you look at my place as an example, I have roading corridor for CODC's arterial route, which is Springvale Road. I have NZTA State Highway 85 corridor, and there is a real rabbit issue in both. I managed it by not having rabbit netting, so that the rabbits that were on the corridor could come into my property and I could shoot them or poison them within my property. I got so sick of the rabbits that the only way to manage it was actually to put up rabbit netting, which I did. So now what I have is managed rabbits within my property and a whole heap of rabbits outside of my property. And neither CODC nor NZTA will do anything about that. It used to be under my roading engineer position years ago that landowners were responsible for pests right to the centre line of the highway when it come to state highways. I guess our staff have the ability to go to the Cromwell Cemetery to CODC and say you must manage your rabbits, even though we don't seem to be doing that at the moment. So in this instance, why aren't we including council for their road reserves in this approach? Sorry, that's a long question.
So we're not including district councils in the approach because they have the same rules that apply to a private landowner. So I've just written down those property areas that you've suggested, and we will have staff go and inspect them and ensure that they are compliant, and we'll take appropriate regulatory action we're required to ensure that those areas that are managed by CODC are managed appropriately. The NZTA one would be one that we would need to push up to ministers as well. But the CODC is required to comply just like you are. So that's why we're not putting them in the letter. It's a regulatory function we need to undertake as an organisation for CODC matters.
Okay, well, hopefully then we see some heightened push against councils for their arterial routes. Okay, thank you.
Hello, Karen.
Thank you. I think that I just wanted to reflect on my experience of working with ministers. Obviously in Wellington, that's part of what you do. And my experience here tells me that the minister has indicated he would be very willing to receive something written as a tool to bring up the issue. And I think that you're right, that it needs to be very clear that this is an issue. He's probably looking for how he can continue to progress the discussion. A letter to a minister gives him a lot of evidence, really, regardless of whether or not we put in quantitative evidence, and I agree entirely there is a need for quantitative evidence, but the letters to the minister have a very powerful impact on what it gives them license to speak about. So I think being clear of what the council wants and want him to progress needs to be clear. But I don't know anyone in Otago who doesn't think that this is a very significant issue. I mean, it's just endemic. And originally when I saw the papers for today, I know that like at Moeraki, it's just, we talk about, it's not, you don't see the flatland, you see it waving so much because there's so many rabbits running around. It's everywhere. And my opinion, the co-chair, Edward, is that I'm sure we'd be prepared to obviously overtly provide support from ourselves as well to this, because it's such an issue for all of Whenua as well. But I think don't get too hung up on how much we have to prepare for it. Be very clear, feed off the words of what he said about what he would welcome, and go for it, because once you've started a dialogue via a letter to the minister, that can also continue.
Kia ora, Karen. You're just picking up on your point about Mana Whenua. Yes, it's certainly I could tell you quite a few war stories from down our way too. So yeah, support the principle. Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, look, if this problem has been around for as long as it has, it clearly our first step should be trying to get people to engage and reflecting on the Moeraki situation. One of the problems seemed to be the lack of engagement from those groups, from the government groups. So let's get a mechanism in place to start that talking first. And I think that's been a proven way for ORC to go into compliance, is talk first, educate, and then beat them up if they don't listen. So I just think that that's the way to do it. And I think engagement is the key. And if you start at the top, and the top person saying you need to engage with these bodies to sort the problems out and to identify the problems, I think that's the best way to start. So I'm happy to help you draft it. Thank you.
Hello.
Oh, there's no question there, was there?
And don't appear to be any more either. So we do have recommendations. One, to note the report. Thank you. And the recommendations to endorse option 1 in the paper there. So we move. Do we move?
Happy to move.
Councillor Malcolm, seconded by Councillor McCall. So no further discussion. No need to. Okay, we'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you very much. I think that completes meeting. So I think it completes your meetings for the day. For today.
Yes, sorry.
So we'll just close as we opened. I might use your bit of care this time.
That you gave us.
Yeah, so I probably should do it more often. Kua mutu a mātou mahi o tēnei wā, manaki tia mai mātou katoa o mātou hoa, o mātou whānau awa ki te aorangi. Haumi hui e tai.
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Ka